Hey everyone, Chris here with a quick filler video to cap off videos for 2022. This is actually going to be the last video I put out this year, as I'll be taking most of December off entirely from making videos, to give myself a break from the video grind, and give myself a chance to put in some solid work on other projects, not to mention tend to real life, as things are always most busy for me in December. But before I sign off for the rest of the year though, I'd like to give everyone an update on what's been going on and what to expect for 2023. So, as I'm sure most of you have noticed, videos were unfortunately inconsistent for much of 2022 and even some of 2021. I explained some of the ridiculousness that's been going on in prior fillers, but a quick update on that is that many of the issues I reported before are still issues, though to a lesser degree. Renovation work is still happening in the apartment building I live in, and it's simply not possible to know when it will happen in a unit that's close enough that it disrupts my ability to sleep or work or whatever. But there is slightly, and I do mean slightly, less of it with every passing month. So with any luck, things will be mostly back to normal before too long. My stomach issues are mostly gone. My shoulder is sorta healed up, like not perfect, but I've kind of gotten used to just being careful with how I move it now, and I don't really want to tempt fate. Though the last couple times it felt like it was going to pop out of place, it didn't, so that's a good sign. And the noise issues with routinely barking dogs is technically still an issue, but far reduced compared to where it was for the last half of 2021 and the first 2/3 of 2022. So that's at least one thing that's improved considerably. In short, physically speaking, things still aren't great, but they're improving. Now let's talk about videos. The 7th season of Ancient DOS Games seems to be off to a pretty good start based on the feedback I've received so far. So things will be continuing as usual on Saturday, January 7th, 2023, on the bi-weekly release schedule that I've been on for a while now. The first ADG video of 2023 is going to be a standard review, though I haven't actually selected which game I intend to cover yet, though I am going to post a hint about it over on Patreon when I do have it selected. But just so it doesn't come out of left field, the very next video following is going to be another filler video, as I got inspired to cover something which is not DOS related, which relates to a game that I was in a very unique position to experience in the wrong way. But it's going to need a full video to go into proper detail, so I can't just throw it together at random. It needs to be part of the normal rotation of videos. And then I'll be back to the usual 5 proper ADG videos between each filler. As for Shovelware Diggers, it'll be resuming on Wednesday, January 4th, and as I've already mentioned in a few places, but not yet in a video, I have made the decision to bring the series to a close, at least for the time being, come week number 300, which will probably land sometime in April. It's kind of crazy just how much software we've perused over the course of the series, but we're getting to the point where there's not a lot of variety left for the current shovelware collection, and while other shovelware collections do exist, I feel we're going to hit a ton of repeating content if we stick to Windows 3.x and DOS. Now I would like to do Windows 9x shovelware someday, but as it stands, I lack the equipment to do it right, I lack the space to even set up the right equipment, and then I would still need some appropriately large shovelware collections on top of that. So instead, once Shovelware Diggers week number 300 goes up, there'll be a couple or 3 weeks following where I'll be preparing my next side series to replace it. I'm still not ready to reveal exactly what I'm going to be doing, but I do want to give some teasers. Firstly, it'll still be a retro gaming series, but the focus will not be on DOS or Windows software. Secondly, it's still going to have input from Patreon supporters. In fact, it's going to have even more input than before, as all Patreon supporters who are at the unique tier or higher, who are the ones presently able to select games for Shovelware Diggers, will be able to select games for the upcoming series as well, while all Patreon supporters, regardless of tier, will be able to vote on those selections. Yeah, it's not going to be me making the selections anymore. And it's not necessarily going to be games that are unknown either, but they're all going to be games that I don't have any experience with for sure. So yeah, that's all I want to say about that for now. I'll be revealing exactly what I have in mind following week number 290 of Shovelware Diggers, which will likely be at the start of February, so make sure to stay tuned for that. The last thing I want to quickly touch on is my game development efforts. Now, I believe I've commented on this in a prior filler video, but it's definitely been a struggle trying to get back into proper game development. A big part of it has been not only committing to an engine, but learning the intricacies of that engine. For a while it seemed like it was going to be Godot engine, then Unreal seemed like a strong contender, but as of right now, I've been doubling down on learning Godot engine. It's definitely not the most powerful and has some weird idiosyncrasies to work around in order to produce software which performs properly and without lag spikes or hitching or such, but I've been learning how to get around those things, and it's definitely simpler to learn than other engines, given the amount of power it does offer, both in 2D and 3D capabilities. And while I haven't written much in the way of practical code with Godot yet, I have been doing lots of tests to ensure certain things work as intended, or if I can do things in unintended ways and still end up with something which works. Not to mention pushing the limits to see how much power it truly offers, and creating shaders to get used to how the shader system works, since it's a big part of making things either look the way you want them to, or making things truly customizable for the end user. Now here you can see a shader that I created, which allows me to take a simple texture with standard colors and turn it into a glowing texture, which works fine in 3D, but when I tried to copy this shader over to use in 2D, it didn't quite work as intended. But I did ultimately figure out that one too. I also spent a good amount of time translating that glowing effect for producing a glass-like material, as this is just a small taste of what some of the collectible objects would look like in one of the 2 game ideas I'm working on. I've been doing lots of other experimenting too, such as with this extremely simple first-person shooter thing that I put together, which was going to be the basis for a real-time dungeon crawl idea, but I've since put that one on the back burner. As it stands, I'm still flip-flopping between my Ivescape idea and Project LJ, depending on which I feel like working on at any given time. Now, Project LJ I haven't let much info out about, not even the name of the game, because it's an RPG and I wouldn't want to spoil the story to any major extent. Now, as of this moment, the story is pretty much all done, even the side stories, but there's still a whole bunch of other things to develop, such as how the bosses are going to work, dialogue for non-story NPCs or shop owners, and plus I've only really plotted out about 25% of the items of the game, so there's still a bunch of that stuff to do in terms of design. As for Ivescape, that was the game which started out as Vectorscape, then went to Vector Zone, which I had released a very rudimentary pre-alpha for several years back. The pre-alpha involved rotational turning from an overhead perspective, and was making about a third of everyone who tried it motion sick. So then I transitioned it to a twin stick idea, and while I had a working pre-alpha for that, I never actually released it because it was kind of buggy as I was still developing the engine myself. However, working with the Godot engine is now allowing me to realize the Ivescape idea in 3D, but with 2D gameplay. So that's what I'm aiming for with it, and I have a bunch of the design work done for it, though there is still a solid chunk left. Now, as it stands, the next game I make is either going to be Ivescape or Project LJ, but I have no idea which, since Project LJ is absolutely the better game with much simpler mechanics and no procedural content, but it's also much larger and requires aesthetics and a music style which I am not skilled at. While Ivescape is a somewhat smaller idea with aesthetics and music I am very capable of producing, but with far more complex mechanics, and much of the game is procedurally generated as well, which all makes it just that much harder to code. Regardless, I'm still plugging away at both of them when I can. As I've mentioned before, solo dev isn't anywhere near quick, especially when you spend most of your time working on completely unrelated things, like 2 separate video series. But when one of those projects gets to a point where I am actively focused on developing it and have tangible stuff to show for it, I will absolutely let everyone know. Anywho, that'll be all for this filler video, and I hope you've all enjoyed all the ADG and Shovelware Diggers content for the year. Now make sure to stick around for 2023 because there's going to be plenty more videos to come. And until then, have a happy holiday season, regardless of what you do or don't celebrate, and if you do need some more content to tide you over, I'm going to go ahead and recommend all of these channels because they all make great videos and I watch their stuff routinely. Links in the video description. Bye for now, and see you all next year. Thanks for watching, everyone, and extra special thanks to all the people seen here supporting me on Patreon. If you'd like to join in with them and support the show directly, head on over to patreon.com/KASICK.